The train screeched into Frontier Station with a blast of steam that swallowed the wooden platform in a white cloud. When it cleared, the world looked sharp and cold, as if the Wyoming wind had carved everything down to its bones. Annabelle Rose pressed her gloved hand against the window, staring at the lonely stretch of land waiting for her. This was the end of her journey, the end of what she used to be, and the beginning of whatever she had to become to survive. She gripped the small, worn bag at her feet, the only thing she owned that wasn't a memory she wished she could forget. 3 months earlier, she had answered an advertisement with a trembling hand and a heart that felt half dead. Respectable rancher seeks companionship, must be willing to work. Passed, not questioned. No promises, no sweet words, just a chance to breathe again. Frontier Station, the conductor called. End of the line. Annabelle stood, keeping her chin high the way she'd learned to do when people whispered, and they always whispered. During the long ride from St. Louis, she'd felt eyes on her, heard quiet, judging voices behind newspapers. But none of that mattered now. She stepped off the train into the biting air. That was when she saw him. Eli McCall stood like he had been carved from the mountains behind him, tall, broad, silent. His long coat moved with the wind, and his gray eyes watched her with a calm she didn't understand. He didn't nod. He didn't smile. He just waited. She walked toward him, careful, steady, refusing to let her fear show. "Mrs. Rose," he said. "Miss Rose," she corrected softly. "Or Annabelle. Whatever suits." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, but it vanished quick. Let's ride. No welcome, no questions. No offer to carry her bag. Good. She didn't want kindness. Kindness was something that always came with a hidden cost. The wagon was simple and practical. Supplies filled the back. A folded blanket sat on the seat, his only gesture toward comfort. She climbed up without help. He followed, keeping a respectful distance between them, the bench just wide enough for silence. They rode through the small town. Just a store, a saloon, a few houses leaning with age. People stared openly. Annabelle didn't meet a single gaze. She focused on the mules pulling them toward the mountains, where the land opened wide and harsh. Sagebrush bent under the wind. The sky stretched forever, blue and merciless. After an hour, she spoke. "How far to your place?" "Our place," he corrected, not unkindly. 8 miles. Another hour. The words hit her harder than the cold. Our place. She didn't know if she wanted that to feel comforting or terrifying. The trail narrowed, winding through tall pines until they reached a meadow with an old log cabin settled in the center. Smoke rose from the chimney. A small barn stood near the corral, where a few horses watched them arrive. The place looked worn, tired, but solid. A shelter or a prison. She couldn't tell yet. "It ain't much," Eli said, "but it's warm and dry." "It's fine," she answered. Inside, the cabin was clean and quiet. A stone fireplace warmed the room. A small table with 2 chairs sat near the window. Shelves held tin cups and simple dishes. A doorway led to a back room he pointed to. "You can have that. I sleep by the fire." Doors got a latch. He didn't explain the meaning. He didn't need to. Privacy, safety, a promise. Annabelle nodded. He left her alone, stepping out to tend the mules. She stood in the center of the room, gripping her bag, feeling the weight of her new life settle into her bones. When he came back inside, she faced him. "I should make something clear," she said quietly. "I will work, I will cook and clean, but there are conditions." His gaze held steady. "Say them." "Don't touch me. Don't ask about my past." The fire crackled. Her heart hammered. He only nodded. "Fair enough. I've got my own reasons for wanting a business arrangement. Preacher comes through once a month. We'll make it legal then. Till that time, you're hired help with room and board." Relief rushed through her so fast her knees almost buckled. She hid it well. He added wood to the fire and said, "Stew's on the table. Back room has blankets. Outhouse is behind the barn. Welcome to the Triple C Ranch." With that, He picked up a rifle and disappeared back into the evening, leaving her alone in the fading light. She carried her bag to the back room. The bed was narrow but clean. The quilts smelled of cedar. She sat down and let her shoulders fall for the first time in days. Through the wall, she heard Eli return, heard the quiet sounds of a man moving through familiar routine. She lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, forcing deep breaths that didn't come easy. She reached into her bag and pulled out the one thing she trusted, the knife, wrapped in old calico cloth. 7 inches of sharp steel, her last defense, her last friend. She slid it under her pillow. Night wrapped around the cabin. The wind howled through the pines. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf cried. Annabelle kept her eyes open, her hand on the knife, ready for anything. This place, this man, this life. It could break her or save her. She didn't know which yet, but morning would come, whether she feared it or not. The blizzard arrived without warning, 3 weeks after Annabelle stepped into her new life. By dawn, the sky had vanished behind a wall of swirling white, and the cabin shook under the force of the storm. She woke to cold air biting at her face and the eerie silence that comes before fear settles in your bones. Eli was already stoking the fire, moving with quiet urgency. Snow hammered the windows as if trying to break in. "Could last days," he said. "Maybe a week." Annabelle wrapped her shawl tighter. She wasn't scared of tight spaces or long nights. She'd lived through worse. But living through it with another person this close, not knowing how much of herself she could keep hidden, felt dangerous in a different way. For 2 days, they stayed trapped in the cabin. Eli worked on small repairs by the hearth while Annabelle kneaded dough, swept floors, tried to keep busy. The silence grew heavier with every passing hour. Finally, Eli spoke. "Storm this bad killed half Tom Morrison's herd last winter. Found frozen standing up come spring." Quote, "How cheerful," she said before she could stop herself. To her surprise, Eli chuckled, a small, rusty sound. "Ain't much for cheerful talk," he admitted. "Mary used to say that." Annabelle paused. She had known he'd been married once, but he'd never spoken her name until now. The moment hung between them like fragile glass. "How long?" she asked quietly. 4 years. His voice flattened. "She tried to birth our son while I was driving cattle. Neighbor found, and both after." Pain flickered across his features, deep and old. Annabelle recognized it. Grief carried its own shadows. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "long time ago." But the tightness in his jaw said otherwise. Grief didn't know time. By the 3rd day, her body felt heavier than the blankets she piled around herself. She woke shivering violently. Her head throbbed. The room tilted when she tried to stand. "Stay down," Eli said, appearing beside her like he'd been listening for every breath. "You've been coughing all night." "I'm fine," she tried to say, but the words came out weak and broken. "No, you ain't." Quote. He touched her forehead with the back of his hand, and she flinched on instinct. His hand withdrew instantly, but concern sharpened his eyes. "You're burning up. Need to get you to the fire." "I can walk." "No, you can't." Before she could argue, he lifted her, blankets and all. Panic shot through her chest. Her hands pushed against him, her breath coming fast. Don't touch me." "Easy," he said softly, voice steady as a rope in a storm. "Ain't nothing but getting you warm. You'll die in that bed." He set her gently on his own pallet near the fire, stepping back so quickly it was clear he understood her fear. But fear gave way to fever, and soon she only felt heat and shaking and the weight of her own breath. "I'll make willow bark tea," he said. "Helps bring fever down." Annabelle tried to argue, but the room spun too hard. She curled in on herself as another wave of chills hit. The fire felt too far away, the blankets too thin. "You should have told me you were feeling bad," Eli muttered from the stove. "You're too thin. Don't eat enough." "I work," she croaked. "I earn my keep." No one said otherwise. He brought her a cup. The bitter drink slipped down her throat, but her stomach revolted. A wave of nausea bent her forward. Eli was beside her in a heartbeat, holding the basin, careful not to touch her skin. Afterward, he settled in a chair beside her, leaning forward with elbows on his knees. "I'll sit watch," he said. "Keep the fire going." "You don't have to." "I do," he said simply. Hours passed. She drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she heard his voice, steady, low, talking about weather signs, horse training, anything that might tether her to the world. At one point, she woke gasping, caught between nightmare and fever. "I won't go back," she whispered desperately. "I'd rather die than go back." "Nobody's taking you anywhere," he said firmly. "You're here. You're safe." Storms breaking. She couldn't stop the words spilling out next. "Touch me, and I'll leave." A long silence followed. Then he answered in a low, even tone. "Then go." But not tonight. Quote, and something inside her cracked, not from fear, but from the quiet kindness she didn't know how to handle. She cried, not silent tears, but ragged sobs that shook her whole body. She buried her face in the blankets, ashamed of the sounds coming out of her. Eli didn't touch her. He didn't hush her. He just kept the fire steady and his voice gentle, letting her cry out years of fear and hurt into the dark. By dawn, the fever broke. Her body felt weak but clear. She blinked into the morning light and found Eli still in the chair, eyes rimmed red, shoulders slumped from exhaustion. "You stayed," she whispered, said I would. He stood slowly, stretching muscles stiff from the night. "I'll make breakfast." "Eli?" He paused. "Thank you." He didn't turn, but she saw his shoulders lift and fall. "What else was I gonna do? Let you freeze?" Later, as she ate the simple meal he cooked, she watched him move around the cabin with quiet care. Something had changed between them during the night. The distance they had kept so carefully had thinned. Not gone, but no longer unbreakable. She wasn't ready for trust. Not yet, maybe not ever. But for the first time, she wondered if this place, this cabin, this man, could be more than survival. Maybe, just maybe, it could become something she never thought she'd have again. A beginning, a chance, a life she didn't have to run from. Spring crept into the Wyoming mountains, slow and stubborn, melting winter one patch of snow at a time. Annabelle recovered with each passing day, gaining strength, color, and a steadiness that had been missing from her life for years. Eli watched her quietly, never asking questions, never pushing her for more than she could give. But something gentle began to grow between them, slow, careful, like the small shoots rising in the thawed earth. One bright morning, Eli told her to close her eyes. "Why?" she asked, suspicious. "Just trust me." The words felt heavy. Trust was not something she gave, but she closed her eyes anyway. He led her over uneven ground, stopping at a sheltered hollow between two ridges. "Open them!" She did, and gasped. He had built a garden. The soil was dark and turned, ready for planting. A fence of woven branches circled the space to keep animals out. Along one edge bloomed small purple and yellow flowers, crocuses pushing their way into the world. "You did this?" she whispered. "Started last fall. Didn't know who'd answer the advertisement. Figured whoever came might want something pretty to look at besides snow and cattle." "For me?" "For you," he said softly. "If you stay." The words were simple, but they hit her heart like an unexpected storm. She knelt and touched the soft petals, amazed that something so delicate could bloom in such a harsh place. "I don't know how to garden," she admitted. "I'll teach you." And he did. They spent mornings planting seeds and turning soil. He showed her how to check for frost, how to guide water through small channels he'd carved. His hands were big, rough from ranch work, yet gentle when he sifted earth or placed new sprouts in the ground. In those quiet hours, she learned something new about him. Eli McCall wasn't just a man surviving the frontier. He was a man trying to create beauty where there had been none. One afternoon, Annabelle picked up the rifle she'd seen Eli clean so many times. He looked surprised. "You planning to shoot dinner or something else?" Quote, "I want to learn," she said. A woman alone needs to protect herself. You're not alone. She studied him, the way he said it, the firmness of the words. Aren't I? She asked softly. Something cracked in his expression. Not anger, but hurt. No, Annabelle, not anymore. He spent the afternoon teaching her how to breathe, how to sight down the barrel, how to brace her shoulder so the recoil didn't surprise her. She wasn't perfect, but she was steady, determined. When she hit an old tin can clean off the fence, he gave a rare smile. Good shot. That night, though, something hung between them. During dinner, he finally spoke. I ever give you reason to fear me? Annabelle froze. No. Then why do you look at me like you're waiting for me to turn into a monster? Her hands trembled as she set down her fork. Because the last man I trusted turned into one. Quote. Eli stood slowly, frustration simmering beneath his comb. I'm not him. I know that, she whispered. I know, but knowing and believing aren't the same thing. He didn't shout. He didn't slam a door. He just walked to the barn and stayed there until the stars came out. Annabelle followed. She found him sitting beside Buttercup, the gentle mare, stroking her neck. She's pregnant, he said quietly. Due next month. Eli, she began, but he held up a hand. I get it. I do. You've been hurt. Bad. But I'm standing here, trying to give you something good. Something real. And you keep treating me like a danger. She sank onto a hay bale across from him. I'm trying, she said. But fear gets there before anything else. His gaze softened. Then let's keep trying. They sat together in the quiet barn, breathing in the warm smell of hay and horses. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't magic, but it was a step forward. And for them, that was everything. Days later, trouble found them. A stranger rode into town, a man lazy in posture but sharp in the eyes. Annabelle felt fear slam through her when she saw him through the general store window. Jake Hollister, Samuel's cousin, the one who had sworn he'd hunt her down. Annabelle returned to the wagon pale and shaking. Eli noticed instantly. What happened? Nothing, she lied. But Eli wasn't a fool. When he saw Hollister himself, watching the town like a hawk circling prey, he understood. They rode home in heavy silence. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Eli loaded his rifle. His name's Jake Hollister, he said. Been asking for a woman fitting your description. Annabelle's breath came shallow. He found me. Eli stepped closer, not touching but near enough to steady her. He won't take you, he said. Not while I'm breathing. But the next morning, Hollister rode straight into their yard. Annabelle opened the door before he could knock, determined not to look hunted. Hello, Belle, he sneered. Been a long ride finding you. My name is Annabelle McCall. And you're trespassing. Eli appeared then, rifle in hand, stance protective and ready. You'd best leave, Eli said. Not before I see justice for my cousin, Jake smirked. She killed him. I defended myself. Annabelle shot back. He'd have beaten me to death. Jake leaned closer, voice low and poisonous. Your past always catches up. Then let it catch me standing, she replied. Eli stepped between them, eyes like cold iron. You leave now, he said, or you stay and regret it. Jake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. This ain't over. He rode away, dust rising behind him like a warning. Eli turned to Annabelle. Pack what you need, he said. We're leaving for a few days, staying with the Morrisons. I won't run again, she whispered. We're not running, he said. We're preparing. She met his steady gray eyes. Something in her shifted, trust settling deeper than fear. Together, she asked. Together, he said. Or not at all. And Annabelle knew in that moment that no matter what came next, danger, past shadows, gunfights, or truths too heavy to speak, she wasn't alone anymore. Not in this land. Not in this cabin. Not in this life she was slowly, painfully learning to believe she deserved. She had found more than shelter. She had found someone who stood between her and darkness. Someone who wasn't scared of her ghosts. Someone who chose her, every day, every moment. And for the first time in years, Annabelle Rose felt something powerful rise inside her. Hope.